You had encountered aliens. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So one of the first. All right. Yeah, I don't know how many people watching believe in alien stuff, but if you don't have any personal experience with it, the best you can really do is just look at dozens, if not hundreds, of encounter cases, and then make up your own mind whether there is really something to it. Okay. But in my case, I was fortunate, or I should say unfortunate, another way, to have had paranormal experiences when I was a kid. So my mom, she is from Singapore, so she's Asian. My dad, he's German, so I grew up in Germany for until I was like 7 or 8 years old. But anyway, so I was a little German kid, and one of the first encounters I had is where I was asleep in my crib at night. I was like, I don't know, 4 to 6 months old, something like that. Actually, a little bit after that, maybe 6 or 7. And I remember waking up in the dark, although there was a spinning toy above me, like a mobile, that was lit up by a light. And I remember feeling something approaching me from the side of the crib. And all of a sudden, it would look down at me, and what it was like a gray alien face, like a white, gray, ashen, wrinkly face with like beady black eyes, and it was just kind of staring down at me, and I freaked out so bad. I couldn't even talk at the time, but I could make out one word. That one word was ghost. I said ghost in German at the top of my lungs, and my mom and dad came running in like a minute later, and of course the thing was gone by that point. But this happened many nights during that time, so I remember that pretty well, and it was pretty terrifying. You know, you're just like a little kid alone in a crib, and some creepy ghost alien or something appears over the side. So that was the one. The ones that happened after that, let's see. I had quite a number of classic alien abduction experiences as well. And most of those would involve my mom as well. So my mom and we would be in our bedroom during the daytime. So it was like, I would estimate like 2 in the afternoon, judging by the angle of the sun coming in through the windows. So it was like 2 in the afternoon. My mom and I were in the bedroom, and the door was closed. And then she would say, "Tom, I have to go out there and do some stuff, and like go out into the rest of the apartment." And I sensed that there was so much activity happening in the rest of the apartment, like it was full of people, but they weren't people. And so she left, closed the door behind her, and then that's when my memory would start kicking in of all the previous times that this had happened. And all of a sudden I remember, oh crap, I know exactly what's going to happen next. And sure enough, the door would open, and in would come 6, 7, 8, even a dozen classic gray aliens in blue bodysuits, and they would rush up on me and try to grab me. However, half the time I would either hide in the corner or I would hide under the bed. And sometimes when I hid under the bed, they couldn't get me. So I remember being under the bed looking out and seeing little gray alien legs running back and forth around the bed, not knowing how to get me out of there until they called a supervisor who then came in and then kind of convinced me to come out. And that's when my memory starts to go blank. But I remember that. I remember coming back from the abduction where the ship was out in the courtyard, probably 10 stories up, floating in the air. And I remember being floated out of it over the courtyard, looking down and looking at all the other apartments. I remember that very clearly. And then landing in our balcony, and then back into the apartment and back into the bedroom. And then where I would lay down on the bed and go to sleep. And then, like a minute or two later, they would be gone. and then I would wake up having no memory of what just happened, because that's typically how it happens. And the only reason why I do remember it is because sometimes I would have memory flashes of the abduction experience. And so during that time, I was telling my grandma and my mom all the time about these stone men, or these gray men, that would always come for me. And they thought, of course, that it was my imagination. So my mom at the time, she had uh, a lot of weird abduction symptoms as well, like really large bruises on her body with puncture marks in them, for example. That was a classic one. But see, she was Buddhist, okay, and Buddhism, especially not like the esoteric Zen Buddhism that we know in the West, but more like the average person's Buddhism in the East. That entire culture is very familiar with the idea of dead spirits and ghosts and so on. So that's what they believe in. And so when she had all these marks, she thought that it was our dead great grandmother who was coming around and like pinching her, something like that. And it spooked her so much that she took a plane back to Singapore trying to get away from it, you know, and it still followed her there. So yeah, weird stuff was going on, and those were my earliest alien encounters. And I had other things like a demon encounter where I was sitting on the couch watching TV at night, and my mom was there too, and I kept feeling something behind me. I kept feeling something behind me watching me, like an evil, very evil presence. And so I kept turning around, looking behind the couch at the dining room behind me, and the light was on, and nothing was there. Well, my mom, she goes into the kitchen to get me like a lollipop or something, and I feel it again, but this time it was way stronger than before. And I turned around, and there it was. It was like a 7 or 8 foot tall, so that's like 2 to 3 meters tall shadow being with red orange glowing eyes, just kind of looking down at me. And I freaked out so bad, I screamed at the top of my lungs. My mom comes running in, and she has to slap me out of it, and I was like crying. And she carried me to the bedroom to get away from whatever it was. She didn't see it, and when I looked over her shoulder when she was carrying me, I didn't see it either. But I 100% saw this demonic shadow being looking down at me. So I had demons, I had aliens, and a couple other ghost experiences. But yeah, that kind of taught me early on that, man, reality is just messed up. It's like, what the hell is going on? And that's what, like I said earlier in the show, that's what kind of put me on this quest to try to figure out what is really going on and how to deal with these non-human forces, like what they're all about, how their tactics work, and how it's going to impact the future of humanity, and ultimately what we can do about it.
How is a demon different from an alien?
Oh, that's a great question. So nowadays, if you ask people what are aliens, some will say, okay, they're extraterrestrials, they come from another planet. But then some people will say that aliens are actually demons in disguise, right? So demons, I mean, every culture knows demons. Every culture has a name for demons. Like I know like in like the Hindu cultures, you got the asuras and various other types of demons. You got the Naga snake people that live underground, for example. But the Chinese culture has their own term for it. Native American has their own term for it. And Christianity, we call them demons. But what are demons really? Well, demons are simply, how I say, malevolent or maleficent, non-physical constructs of consciousness. So they're beings. The beings that are made of dark, demonic, or dark, evil energy, and their sole goal is to terrorize, to feed on your soul energy, and to basically attack your spirit, your light, your God spark within you, and kind of cut you off from the greater divinity. So it's kind of to take your soul and to drag it down into darkness through corruption, through fear, through depression, self-loathing, drug abuse, whatever, crime, suicide, all these things that afflict humanity. Okay, obviously some of it is just due to being under too much pressure in life, so therefore you feel depressed. I mean, that's logical, right? However, demons go after people who have that sort of thing already going on, and they make it way worse than it needs to be.
So
And that's the issue.
yeah, so
Yeah.
demon's kryptonite would be if I tried to be as positive and compassionate and empathetic and joyful as possible, uh,
hmm
then that would terrify the demon, right? Logically speaking.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And for example, if you are actually being attacked by a demon in bed, like it takes a very strong demon to do this, but I know people who have experiences. So if a demon actually attacks you, you got a couple choices. You can try to fight with anger and try to hit it with your astral body or whatever. But a lot of time, that's just going to feed into it. That's just going to make it stronger. What you can do instead, if you want, I mean, if you have the ability to do this, is power yourself up with love, euphoria, a connection to the divine, or even try to love the demon. Even try to project towards it a feeling of love or sympathy, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry that you are this way," and you'll watch what happens. The demon will get so confused, it'll get discombobulated because it can't handle that energy. And a lot of times it'll either break apart or it'll kind of retreat back into the portal, the astral portal that it came from, and that's it for that experience. So yeah, I mean, that positive energy can totally mess with demons. But so I forgot to answer your question. How are demons different from aliens? And so in my personal experience, okay, in my personal experience, demons are strictly non-physical beings. They're non-physical, like ghosts are. They're like evil ghosts, essentially. Okay. Whereas aliens, they are also non-human. However, they have physical bodies. They have physical ships, physical bases. Now, the reason why there's a confusion between the two is because their bodies and their ships and their technology and their bases and so on, it's not physical in the way that we think of physicality. Like like for example, this stylus right here, okay? This stylus, it's made of matter, and I can set it down, I can pick it up. It's solid, it's persistent. As long as I own this, it's going to be the way that it is. Well, the kind of physicality that aliens come from or that they embody, it's more fluid. It's almost like they have a cheat code to the Matrix, and they're able to alter the Matrix code so that they can alter their form, their shape a little bit. Their technology is, it's kind of like an enhanced version of the reality that we exist in. Now, I don't know how old you are, but in the old days, when you got those old video game consoles like Mario on the original Nintendo, you saw like how blocky all the characters were, and there's only so many colors, like what, 32 colors or something. And if you compare that with video games nowadays video games are ultra realistic, right? But it's still both games, they're both simulations. So it's almost like aliens come from another higher reality that is almost like a higher bit version of our video game. So there are additional things that they can do, and they can project themselves here into this collective dream or this simulation, whatever you want to call it. But they can also retreat back into another space-time that is a higher bit, I guess you could say. So it's got more complexity to it, more just a richer experience. So it is like we live in almost like a lower reality, which I guess kind of falls or ties into the idea of humanity being a fallen race, that this reality is fallen. Like, what does that even mean? Is it just spiritually fallen, or is it actually fallen in a very fundamental, actual, tangible way? Like almost like when your computer screws up in Windows and you have to reboot in safe mode. See, back in the day when you reboot in safe mode, okay, now you can't do as much. The colors are kind of messed up because you only got so many colors to work with, right? It's very restricted. So it's almost like we live in a safe mode reality and they come from the full operating system. And that's why they have technology that we can't understand. Because when we try to understand their technology, we are using our safe mode rules to understand the rest of the entire true operating system that it is a version of, right? So that's why when you try to use physics and you try to talk about, oh, how does a UFO work? And how does a propulsion work? Maybe it's gravitons, or maybe they're shooting neutrinos out or something. Well, gravitons and neutrinos, those are words that we use based on our math, our reality, our five senses, our instruments. And that does not include some of the things that aliens use. And so what is it that they use? Well, for that, you can't look at science. You have to look at occultism or religion, or shamanism, something like that. Because those people in those fields, they're familiar with things that go beyond physics. In occultism, for example, like in occultism, they talk about, for example, subtle energies, etheric energy, or astral energy. Etheric and astral, these are terms that occultists use to describe a non-physical kind of energy that is not within the box of science and the five senses. In order to interact and work and see astral and etheric energies, you have to be clairvoyant. Because what clairvoyance is, when your third eye opens, right, and you're able to see through your third eye, what you're seeing is you're using a part of your soul that is outside of this 3D space-time to observe energies that are outside this 3D space-time. So you're developing a sense organ that is capable of perceiving things that are beyond the five senses. That's why it's called ESP, extrasensory perception, all right? And so there are energies, there are principles, and therefore there are technologies that use these energies that are not within the box of the science that we know. And that is what aliens use. And that's why scientists cannot fully understand how their technology works, because it's using etheric and astral energies. I call it demiurgic energy, because earlier when I talked about demiurge being the thing that creates our reality, well, this demiurge, it's made of conscious energy, and the occultists would say that it is made of etheric and astral energy, that is the thing that actually makes up the demiurge. And from this etheric and astral energy field, matter, I don't want to say precipitates, but it's rendered from it. It's kind of like in your browser, okay? So when you load up a browser and you go to a website, is that what the website actually looks like? And the answer is no. The website is actually ones and zeros. It's machine code. So it's machine code, right? But what you see on your screen is, there's like a text box and a title and whatever, button to click. So our reality is rendered from code that is not even physical. It's code that exists in this etheric astral energy field. And so if you have access to this etheric energy field, if you have access to that and you alter it, you can alter physicality. And so that's why it's known within the alien abduction field, for example, that aliens can dematerialize themselves. They can walk through solid walls. They can take an abductee and levitate them out on a blue beam through a closed window. Like, how is it possible to take a person through a closed window? Well, you can if you have control of the fundamental matrix code that makes reality what it is, right? So we're dealing with beings that are semi-physical, that have access to a higher reality, and that can dematerialize from here. And because they can dematerialize, that's why some people think that they might be ghosts or demons, because ghosts and demons are also non-physical. They can also seem to be here but then go somewhere else. So, but they're not exactly the same thing. I mean, demons are more of a spiritual phenomenon. It's more of an astral, spiritual, subtle energy phenomenon, whereas aliens, they have access also to those etheric and astral energies. However, they are still tangible. They still have bodies that need food, that die. They're born or grown or whatever. So that's pretty much the main difference.
Okay. Um, so, who are the aliens who run this matrix, and what is their agenda?
The aliens who run this matrix. So if you look in ufology, you look at all the different types of encounter cases going back to the 1950s, 40s, and also throughout history. You can go into the 1800s, 1500s, 2,000 years ago, the ancient Sumerians. There are plenty of encounter cases with many different kinds of beings. Especially in the 50s and 60s, there's all these like crazy aliens that only one person saw and no one else ever saw it again. But then over time, the same 4 different alien types keep recurring over and over again. So it's almost like you started out with all these different alien types, and then over time they kind of most of them kind of faded out. And nowadays we only got 4 main types. So the first one we all know, they're called the Greys. That's not what they call themselves, but we call them the Greys. And there's these short, the short, big-headed guys with the black eyes. And you got round black eyes. You've got almond-shaped black eyes. You've got 3 feet tall, 4 feet tall, even taller, and so on. You got different Greys. You got those. All right. Second one, we've got Nordics, or you could call them humanoids. And they're people that look like humans for the most part. Some of them are, they got white skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. Some of them got brown hair, but fair skin. And some of them look perhaps a little Asian. Those are the main types that we see. So they look human, but they're alien, so they have extremely advanced telepathic powers, and they got extremely advanced technology. Right, which is kind of weird to think about, like what's going on there, right? So you got those, and then third you have the reptilians, and anyone who's familiar with David Icke knows about reptilians, or if you've been on the internet, you've seen videos on BitChute, all those conspiracy videos. There's always reptilian shape-shifting videos that you stumble across when you start getting into conspiracy research. So you got the reptilians, and then the last ones, which they're not as well known, but they seem to be at the top of the hierarchy of these 4. And those are the mantids. They call them, well, some of them call them a certain type of tall gray, but they look like praying mantises because their heads are kind of triangular, and they got huge eyes, kind of like a praying mantis has. And they're really tall too. And their hands kind of go like that in the front, so it looks like a praying mantis. They look kind of like insects in a way. So those are the 4 main types that we typically see. And so when a person gets abducted, and let's say they get abducted by Greys, a lot of times during these abductions they will also see the Nordics, the reptilian, perhaps on rare occasion the mantid as well. Those are the ones that are reported most commonly nowadays. And if a person does have other types of aliens that they see, I mean, there are other types of aliens that are seen, but they're just not as common. And they don't seem to be the ones in charge. They seem to be more like visitors, or like lesser important groups, But the 4 ones that we keep on hearing about are the Greys, the Nordics, the reptilians, and the mantids. And I wrote a book about those 4 and their agenda It's called Discerning Alien Disinformation. It's free on my site if you go to my site, montalk.net. And in that book, I describe their agenda. I describe how they deceive people, their methods of exploitation, and ultimately how to see through their disinformation. So when you ask me, who is it that's ultimately in control, I would say most likely it's the Mantids in alliance with the Nordics and the Reptilians. Now, some people do believe that these four beings, that they're not organic beings in the sense of having evolved on their own planet over time or something like that. Some people believe that these have actually been genetically engineered on purpose to serve the roles that they're playing right now in abductions. So when a person is getting abducted, they're actually getting abducted by biological instruments of some other intelligence that we don't even know what it looks like. Like something unfathomable, maybe ultra terrestrial, hyperdimensional, something like that. It could even be extremely powerful demons for all we know, meaning that perhaps the entire alien hierarchy, it's possible that it's being headed up by an ultra intelligent, ultra powerful, chthonic kind of demon. So perhaps some people are correct in a way that aliens are demons, but it's not that they're one-to-one identically demons. It's perhaps they're really under the control of the demonic network, for all we know. So that's sort of how I view it, and it's based on 35 years of research and talking to thousands of people over the years who are also experiencers, and kind of putting all that data together. These four types keep recurring, so I'm pretty confident that they exist and that they're the ones who have something in store for humanity in the future as far as disclosure and the whole disinformation agenda goes.
Why are they here? What do they get from exploiting us?
Well, so if you think about, let's say, just to go on a small side tangent, if you think about what is the motivation of demons, for example, and as I mentioned earlier, the whole point of demons is to try to destroy and corrupt the light within you. That's typically what they're for. Now, if you compare that to aliens and how they operate, aliens operate more like a scientific conglomerate of corporations and military all in one. That their sole purpose is to essentially take over and assimilate worlds and create biological products that they can use for their own expansion into the rest of the universe. So they act almost as an imperial, conquering, subversive, biological, military scientific force. That's how I would put it. So you could view them essentially as an evil corporation, because that's how they function. They're very cold. They're sociopathic. They view us as products to use or to design or to modify for their own purposes, right? So, I mean, some of them are into energy harvesting, so treating Earth as an energy farm. And Robert Monroe, one of the famous astral travel researchers, he had a few astral projection experiences where he was shown how Earth is an energy farm constructed by either aliens or hyperdimensional ultra-terrestrial beings that genetically engineered life, well, not all life on Earth, but a lot of life on Earth, to exist for the sole purpose of suffering, dying, and releasing the soul energy that they've accumulated through life. And then they harvest that soul energy, and then they use it for for something. Robert Monroe didn't. He wasn't given details on what this energy, which he called loosh, actually does. But however, if you look at the fields of occultism, especially the part of occultism called psychic vampirism, where you are taught to feed off the life force energy of others to make yourself feel better. See, that gives a clue as to what loosh is really used for. It's used for enhancing the life force, or the enhancing the mental clarity, the occult power, the feeling. It's almost like a drug. It's almost like a drug for aliens and for demons and other non-physical beings, because it makes them more alive. It makes them more powerful. It's like fuel for their technology, essentially. So, like, good metaphor for that would be Dune, the Dune books or the Dune movie. There's a substance called spice, which not only gives people psychic powers, but also is also used in their technology for interdimensional travel. And I think that's a metaphor for this loosh energy. And we as humans, we are the sandworms of Dune, producing producing this thing. And in that book, the way you get this ultra powerful water of life is by taking one of these larval worms and drowning it in water, like putting it through suffering, and it releases this blue substance, which then when you imbibe it, it makes you very psychic and makes you able to see across time. Now, that substance is a metaphor for loosh energy, because if you absorb the life force energy of another person, you're going to feel just way better. You're going to have more energy, more clarity, more power. You're going to be on top of the world with the life force energy that you stole from them, because you're more alive, right? So that's essentially what this loosh energy is. And a certain aspect of the alien phenomenon seems to be geared towards this loosh farming operation. See, now that doesn't mean necessarily that Greys or Nordics eat our soul energy. The same way that someone who works on a dairy farm might not even be into milk. They might not even be lactose tolerant. They might not even be drinking the milk from the cows. However, they work on the farm to get paid, because that's part of their mission. It's part of what they do. So likewise, we have aliens who might not feed on our energy, but they're part of something that does. They're part of an industry that feeds on our soul energies, our life force energy. And if you just look at the world, if you just look at human history, how tragic it is with all the war and the suffering and famine, genocides, it's very easy to see that humanity has been finely tuned to be producers of loosh energy. Just because we are sentient enough to love and to care and to fight for something, right? We're sentient enough to be that, but we're not smart enough to see the entities that are extracting this energy from us and inducing fights, inducing wars, inducing suffering, and then reducing our lifespans and so on. So I do think that the human biological form has been finely tuned to, I hate to say it, but to be almost like cattle for these non-human forces that treat Earth as a farm. And that sounds very bad, but I must remind people, this is only half the picture. I mean, there's a whole other positive half as well. Like everything that I just talked about, that's like the dark side. That's like the dark rabbit hole that you can go down. But like, as I said before on other shows, there's another rabbit hole that goes upwards. Okay, there's another rabbit hole that goes upwards into spirituality, metaphysics, angels, positive forces, the higher self, reincarnation, wisdom, lessons, the spirit, the God spark. See, all these positive things, those are things that are outside all of this dark stuff. It is beyond that. And it's where we truly come from. That's who we truly are at the core. We just happen to be here, embedded in darkness, being subjected to this energy farm because, well, that's an area of speculation. But personally, I believe that we made a gamble. We made a gamble that we come here into this darkness. We face these challenges. And as a result, we gain wisdom, we gain strength, we gain certain spiritual soul powers, so that when we leave, we are stronger and can do more things on the other side than we could otherwise, than just staying up there and not even coming here. But the downside is, by coming here, you lose a lot of your memories. I mean, you don't lose them permanently; they're just sequestered, so they're compartmentalized away. They're quarantined, so you don't have access to your past life memories necessarily. You go through life making mistakes. You suffer a lot for a lot of people, and so the loosh farm operators, the ones who run this corporate farm, they get their energy from it. They get what they want, and then we get what we want because we want the improvement of our souls. So it's almost like trial by fire, trial by water. We come here to face the ultimate darkness in order to learn discernment, knowledge, strength, glory, all these wonderful soul qualities, which you really can only get by coming here and not simply being there and learning it vicariously. See, because here's the thing. See, you could easily stay in the afterlife realm, in the higher spirit realms, and maybe watch people here and learn from their lessons. Okay, you can do that if you want. You can learn from other people's mistakes and the suffering that they're going through, and you can improve in your wisdom that way. But what you can't do is become stronger that way, because you're not going through it yourself. See, it's like a physical therapist or a sports medicine person who knows everything about the human body and how the muscles work, but they're not working out. They're not actually in the gym improving themselves physically. So if they want to improve themselves physically and put their knowledge into use, they got to come into the gym, start working out, make their muscles all sore. And at the end of that entire process, yeah, they're going to be fit and they're going to be living their knowledge. So I think that's one of the major attractions why higher souls come here, is to test themselves and actualize their wisdom and gain more wisdom. So we're kind of improving ourselves, but however, the cost, however, is that we pay an inordinate amount of life force and emotional and loose energy to the operators of this farm or this casino, right? So when people go to Las Vegas, they're going there to have a good time, maybe make some money, right? They're going there for the entertainment and to maybe make some money. But the casinos only exist to make money and to rip people off, right? But because they do that, that doesn't mean that there's no value to going to Las Vegas, because people do get something out of it. They get the fun, the experience, the flash, the food, whatever. They get that out of it, but it comes at a cost of potentially losing all your money. So I think Las Vegas is a pretty good metaphor for our reality and what's really going on here.